So on to organisers and buying event technology. I've had the benefit of the last, I say benefit, it's been a hell of a last 18 months, hasn't it? 2 years even from ETL. But I've had the benefit of working on both event tech supplier and organiser side, having pretty much been on the tech supplier side for, I guess, the last 20 years. And I've learned a hell of a lot of actually what makes an organiser tick. Especially when looking at technology. So guys, maybe just to start, could you introduce a little bit about each of your roles in what you do and maybe how you relate to event technology? So Abby.
Hello. My name's Abby, and I currently work as Global Innovation Success Manager for RX Global, formerly known as Reed Exhibitions. And my role over the last sort of nearly 3 years has been to find new event tech, pilot it, look at whether it works or not, and then roll it out globally. And before that, I was actually on the vendor side, and don't know whether this is the big announcement, but I'm going to go back to the vendor side in about a week and a half. So, bit of a mixed experience.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm the marketing director for MASH Media, and under my remit is international confex and exhibition news. So it's part of my remit is to, very much be supporting the community, events community, and making sure that the tech that is put out into the market, much like Event Tech Live does, is, just put out there for event organisers to see.
Hi, I'm Jo Tyler. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Raccoon Events. We're quite a small, young business, but rapidly growing. We organise the National Running Show, consumer events. All of our events are consumer. We've recently just launched the National Snow Show. The last one was the weekend before last. And we've got 8 events in total now and a new digital platform.
And so for transparency, I work with Joe, so we've been looking at a lot of those digital technologies together. So I'm kind of interested to learn, especially from you two as well, what the processes are when selecting your tech. So there's a lot of stages of selecting technology, and for event tech suppliers, from pitching, relationships, building trust, integrations, and so on. But maybe, Alex, I could start with you, pitching. I know when we were talking about this before, you've got a massive bugbear that is like an instant strike-off for people. So when's the right time to pitch or approach you?
Yeah, I think it's not necessarily a bugbear. It's more of a little bit of a frustration, because I know the tech that people are trying to sort of present to me are going to be of use, but I think it's something around timing that if you sort of give me a call and I've got a big show, or my team have got a show that's, in 3-4 weeks' time, which is sort of critical point, and it's a sales call, it comes through the central line, and you're like, oh God, it sounds really good, and you end up having to say those, soul-crushing words. Can you get them to email it to me? Because by that point your budget is pretty much spent or committed. If the event's going well, you're just account managing or making sure that the visitors have got a great experience, or if it's not going so well, you're just trying to look at organic ways that you can reach your audiences. So for me, the big thing is about timing. It's I think that's really, really critical. And I think the other thing as well is that the level of people, the time of a pitch is that it seems, especially the pandemic, I think, has probably forced the issue forward, and cash flow issues, but it's almost seems they have to close quickly. So are they working to monthly targets, or are they working to sort of 3 to 5 monthly targets to give those the team's time to sort of build those relationships, rather than trying to close really, really quick deals? So I think that's the sort of 2 points that I think we could maybe talk about a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe, time is a good topic. A lot of pitches or emails or LinkedIn notes start with, can I give you a 30 second would be amazing. Could I give you a 30-minute sort of your time to grab your attention? I mean, Joe, how many 30 minutes do you have available in a day to look at all these platforms and get in touch?
I'm really brutal, actually, I have to say. I quite often refuse to take any calls. I don't have a direct line number on my desk. The only way really to reach me is to get me on mobile, and then if you ring my mobile number and I don't know who you are and you start saying, hi, how are you? I'm like, no, I don't have time for small talk. I don't know who you are. I'm really, really brutal. And it's just because I don't have time, and my business doesn't have time for me chatting to people. So it needs to be really concise. I need to understand. I don't want small talk. If you've got a ridiculous job title, I don't want to hear it. If you can't tell me in 2 sentences what your product does and how it's of use to me, like, so much jargon gets thrown at you. Like, what is it? Just tell me what it is. Why are you ringing me? Let's move on. You know, like, it's just, I don't know, I sound really harsh, but you just have so many calls where people say, hi, how are you? What are you? I'm like, who are you? Why are you ringing me?
Yeah, I think just a part with Joe, what is it? And I think that's a huge thing. So even if I've managed to get that sort of concise summary, and I'm in the sort of middle of hell, my show's going to chaos, my team needs support, and then I go, right, actually it does sound quite interesting. I have been given an extra sort of $2,000 to see if we can turn things around, for example. And then I go, right, I'll quickly have a look on the About Us page. And you're right, Joe, the amount of jargon you get through in, all of these buzzwords, I'm like, oh, that's good. I might put it in my marketing copy, but I still don't actually know what service it is.
Yeah, you can look at entire websites and still not understand what the product is or does. And I think especially when you know, not just what is the product, what does it do, what is the value to me? What will it do for my sponsors, my visitors, my team? You know, focus on the sort of on my objectives. Don't focus on what it is exactly that your product. Focus on the sort of result, not how you do it.
And I think that's, with the three of you in your respective companies that you work for, I mean, you've got sort of consumer events, you've got industry-related trade shows and awards, and you've got huge scale, and small, but huge scale B2B kind of events. So the needs of you three are very different. So maybe to give some practical advice rather than just like, stop calling us, but to give some practical advice, like maybe what is a tip for someone to actually understand you and get in touch in the best way? You've talked about sort of, the benefit to me, but what's the best way to reach you?
I think do your research, understand the industry, understand how you fit into that industry. The number of calls I get, people saying, oh, we do lead generation. We're a B2B event. We don't even badge people. Tell me why I need that, because initially you've lost me, because I'm thinking, that's brilliant, B2B, that's not what we do. Like Alex said, research what events you have and when they are, so don't ring at the worst possible time when you're just going to upset somebody. We've got 8 events, and people will ring me and say, what events do you organise? It's on our website. Look it up. Like,
it's pretty straightforward, I think, isn't it? I mean, I remember years ago, this was a long time ago, working on a web platform, but we kind of early on identified each company and all the silos of business they did so that we could be very targeted in the approach. And I think people forget about that maybe in the digital because it's so easy to send out an email or a whatever LinkedIn request or something like that. So it's kind of there's enough information out there to know who's there. Even through this pandemic, you still know who's kind of working in those businesses and what they operate. But maybe like looking at more than just turning on the tech, because I know you guys had said that, a lot of people sort of say, oh, it's very easy, it's plug and play. How often is that the case, Abby?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of telling you that it does everything when actually it doesn't. And I think that suppliers need to be very transparent about what it can deliver and what it can't. Because we were chatting about it. If you tell me that it can't do it, it's not necessarily that I'm not going to use your tech. I might find another way of doing it, or I might think about it more creatively. But if you tell me that something is going to happen, and then it doesn't, and it's close to the event, and I haven't got time to organise something else, then that's it's enormously dangerous. Actually, that's just the word I'd use. I think it's just about being transparent. Be open about what you can and what you can't do, and don't say yes because you want the sale, when actually, right now, you can't.
And also, if you can, work out where you fit in amongst other suppliers, because we've all got lots of tech that we use. We're trying to constantly get pieces of tech to talk to other pieces of tech. So if you say, oh, this is what we do, and you just focused on your product, it doesn't always help. Like, we know you understand your product. We know you think your product's great. That's all brilliant. I need to understand what your product does and how it fits in with everything else we're using and how we can connect them. Because Otherwise, it's a bit pointless having all these individual things that do different.
Do you know, and that's been a common theme through a lot of the topics discussed today. And actually, there was a session earlier talking about VCEF, the kind of the new standardization of data and how those models work, which in theory, if everyone follows that same standard, picking up and changing to another supplier, whether that's registration, badging, online platforms, all that kind of thing, it will make the process easier for the organizers. So I think as a recommendation for any suppliers kind of tuning in is to absolutely look at those sort of VCEF kind of standards to make your life easier when you talk to, say, one of these three buying the technology. But then maybe Alex, we've kind of got a little bit on technology, but also service, right?
Yeah.
Like, how important is it for you to do that? I mean, we're used to things like Facebook and LinkedIn where there is no help. If something goes on, like, good luck.
Yeah.
But we come from a service industry, and organizers especially are maybe still very used to, you need to hold my hand because I don't know what I'm doing with this new piece of technology.
Yeah, and I think the pitch and the onboarding thing are really sort of closely aligned, right? And I think I want to talk a little bit about relationships because I think, Matt, our relationship is probably sort of 13 years old now, and it's just, I know, and it's sort of a loop is that, I think a lot of people spend a lot of money on social and all of the new whizzy tech, but actually what's your T&E budget, right? And I know if it's corporate events, that's a little bit different and there's a lot more red tape and anti-fan policies and stuff, but, you know, Exploria, I don't think Exploria here, but I met, Exploria invited me to an Exhibition News Awards, and then I met you. And then you were at ASP at the time, and then ASP have been my web provider of choice for 10 years. And then you invited me then to a race day, and then I met Tamar from Gleaning, and then Gleaning, I met Lineup Ninja. So again, it's that tech piece, because I know these guys are talking to each other. I know these guys are doing the work for the organizer in the back end. But then I think the onboarding process, I think if you know, you're more likely to sort of be able to pick up a phone and go, right, I know you're busy, but can you just note that this is high on the priority for me and make sure that it's going down onto the team. But I think in terms of onboarding, the one bit that we talked about is, you know, a lot of people, I know they're trying to save time, but, you know, to show people a demo to get the system up and running, it makes me go cold. I'm just like, that's not how I learn. I think my team would appreciate a bit of support if they've got a question. So, you know, and I think Swapcard, I think their onboarding process is really, really good. And I think I mentioned that they are one of the only few suppliers that actually have proactively rang me just to check everything was okay. And I was it was about a week before Confex, and I was like, what do they want? And then I was like, oh, sorry, yeah, that's actually a really nice thing. And actually, yeah, can you just check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things for me? So I think it's actually a false economy, just thinking that you're going to save time pushing all new clients on demos. You know, make sure you've got a really good, strong onboarding human process, I think, would be my recommendation.
And just having a phone number,
Yeah.
it feels like people have got rid of phone numbers. I know I've just said I don't.
Yeah.
But, you know, if anybody, like, if you work with us or you partner with us, you will have my mobile number and I'm available at any time. And it should be like that. People, especially with COVID, have got into the practice of just, well, it has to be a Zoom call, and the time it takes, like, can't I just pick up the phone and talk to somebody when I've got a problem?
Yeah, you don't always want to schedule something in, do you? I mean, we've all been on video enough in the last year to actually, I like walking around my house with headphones on, talking to someone.
Would you mind if I just came in on that as well? But I mean, we're talking sort of high-touch relationships with tech providers. Of course, there are heaps around here of SaaS providers, and you know, they will leave you to it. But there quite often there will be somebody who you can get in touch with when you're actually live, when you're actually doing your event, and it can be as little as a chat window or something like that. Just be cautious though that that's in your time zone. If if they're based in the States and you're having it first thing in China, then you know what, they're probably not going to be available for you. So having that understanding of when do you actually need the support? So if it is SaaS, when might you need the support? And as little as that might be, how do you get it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's SaaS is software as a service.
Yes, software as a service.
It's not just being sassy, kind of,
No.
this is what I need, please help me. But we used a term a few years ago at my last company that was software and a service, and I'm seeing that come back more even with the traditional SaaS companies, that it's kind of, okay, we can provide you, kick-ass software, but we're also going to make sure we support you. So when you're selecting your tech, maybe what questions can people ask about the service levels or support that they could expect? Alex?
I think it's, a point Abby made is just what are your key challenges, right? I think, through the classic sales technique, I'm in marketing, but always going with salespeople into meetings. The best sort of meetings I've ever seen are when they go, right, what are your challenges? Just open up with that, and then the level of detail that they draw. But I think, and especially, the junior members of the team that are often sort of given, perhaps high, long-term, land and expand, but, they go to the most senior people. But they don't ask that question anymore. It's a case of they're going straight in with all of this jargon that, it's impressive, but you don't know what it is. And actually, there's no relatability of this is what my challenge is, because, Abby's role is so different to mine. My role at MASH Media is so much different to what it was at Closer Still, which was private equity driven, and it's so much different to Joe. So one tech or one piece of platform or SaaS might be used in 3 different ways. So just find out a little bit more information and then build your case and your pitch from that.
Well, and that's, another bit about the service, like quite often it can be a hidden cost. I've heard that a lot over the last couple of years. And I know, Alex, when we worked together at ASP, like as a standard, we included a certain number of hours or something like that. But it was quite... Nagas, there we go. Hot chili, also support time. But, within that, it was very trackable to any sort of request that came through. So it was transparent if a team was wasting time on doing stuff that actually they could do quite easily. It gave us, as the tech supplier, transparency of, okay, if everyone keeps logging these same sort of issues, this is what we could develop to make it better. But maybe, Joe, like when you look at that sort of service, what helps you decide, that transparency of cost for service?
I guess when I'm looking for a piece of tech, or even if somebody's presented a piece of tech to me that I didn't know I needed, but then I think I do, I will always go back to, like, what are we trying to achieve here? And I try and be really clear, not just with the salesperson or the account manager, but also trying to have that conversation with the tech provider, so that we've laid all of our cards on the table, we've kind of scenario planned, we've thought about everything we may or may not need, and we work out the cost. And then I'm really clear, like, I'm putting this in my budget and there is no more budget after this. So if you think there's going to be an issue or we might need support hours, let's talk about it now and we'll sign a contract on that basis. And if you don't, like, if something goes wrong, it's kind of a bit game over because there's no more budget, you've got to fix it.
And those cards on the table have to include how much team you have, how much resource do you have to support this. Yeah. And so when you're talking to a vendor about what it takes to deliver it, you also need to be open about how big your team is, what skills they already have, because I know that everybody's event teams have been slashed over the last year and a half. We don't have as much resource as we did, and if it ends up being more work for a team that doesn't exist, it's not going to work. So
yeah, and I think as well, just to add to the cost piece, is I think if you look at a lot of the project management tools, whether it's Trello or Asana or Mondays or even some all email providers, is based on number of sends, or is lead forensics, for example, number of views. And I think if you've got mid to junior marketeers, I think they're not getting duped is the wrong word, but that they're not asking those questions, they're not being told those questions. So for, if they've got the autonomy to place these, then they're locking in a system that could become fundamental to a business or the operation of a team, and then all of a sudden you reach a certain level of users and the price just goes up by 200%, and then the FD goes, what's this invoice for £800 from Mondays? It's like, oh, because my team grew again from 5 people to 15. And I think it's that just, you're better off actually being transparent, because I think that's more of an FD issue, that if he sees that, and then, they'll go, that's unscrupulous. And then the senior marketer and the FD have then got to have a battle of the worth of the business. So just be upfront of or just display it sort of more clearly on your website, that if it's user-based incremental pricing structure, or whether it's email sends or whatever.
So interestingly, when you look at, MailChimp's been mentioned a few times today, but when you look at products like that or Asana and everything else, they're, very SaaS products, but also the pricing is fairly transparent. So it's easier for you to kind of plan a little bit if email lists grow or whatever it might be. How often do you see that in event tech? How often do you see that sort of pricing transparency? I mean, don't be quiet for too long.
Because you, on our notes, you said, somebody got burnt for sort of 10 grand of not checking the T's and C's, and it was someone in, at Closer Still. We appointed a Destra at the time, which are now Uplands, and that wasn't checked, right? Which was okay because the rate of scale of growth at Closer Still, we were expecting it, but it came a lot quicker. So and it was a bit of a shock that we were like, okay, so we started off with 3 events and then we went to sort of 15 events in 12 months. And then obviously your email databases are going from 1 million to, 45 million. And then it was a steep increase, but it was expected, but that wasn't necessarily Mondays is very clear, but I think the email senders, lead forensics, for example, wasn't so clear, but I asked the question. So, because I need to ask it. So I think we're not terrible, but we're not great. But I think there's, room for just check it.
The difference with a Destra, because I've been burnt with that as well, well, not personally, but a business I worked with. The problem is it was like an annual or a 2-year contract, and it was only as you get to the end of that they suddenly say, oh, and by the way, you owe us 10 grand because you've gone over.
Yeah.
Actually, MailChimp is like, it adds to your credit card, but in increment, unless, of course, you suddenly import a whole load of data that is not expected. But because it's monthly, and so you're always going to be aware. But of course, when there's a massive contract and it's an annual one or a 2-year one, and you're going to lump that fee on at the end, and nobody's checked in or nobody said, you're going over your limit, or then it gets to FD level, senior management, and there's an outrage. And it's usually aimed at the supplier because they're going to back their team, so it doesn't do anyone any favours.
So, I mean, maybe there's something to, again, the learning side of that, but have you got KPIs in place with your providers? Are there, whatever it might be, service, cost, support, downtime in the case of technology? Maybe Abby, start with you.
I was just going to talk about sort of benchmarking, really. It goes slightly on the cost still, but yeah, that sort of benchmarking, side-by-side comparison of stuff is almost impossible to do. I mean, there are of course KPIs in the business, but then we tend to stick to 1 or 2. We don't really go across many providers. We have 1 or 2 at any one time. But yeah, the kind of benchmarking of what they're going to deliver is really hard to get to the bottom of.
Is that because you don't understand necessarily what the platform is capable of, or sorry, just to be clear?
No. So it's more that they're so sort of unwilling to give you all of the details so that you can put competitors side by side. That it's almost like, well, I don't want to give you too much info because then you might say no.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate because I've been on the receiving end of that, and when our pricing structure was very different to all of our competitors. We like to think because at the time we simplified things and we made things easier, so we didn't fill out all these extra hundreds of boxes. So for us to kind of almost backdate how we would compare ourselves to a competitor lost any competitive advantage we had because we were simple. So yeah, maybe how can a sort of supplier do that? How can they make it a kind of fair playing ground like that?
I wish I knew. Yeah, okay. I don't know. I mean, so, I'm seeing Aid back there, and just it's like trying to get blood out of a stone from suppliers when they know that you're putting suppliers side by side. I think that's the hard bit, is that you can't. We're obviously looking at many suppliers when we're going to take one on. Why is it so hard for us to lay them out side by side?
Yeah.
Actually, we've just recently done this. We were looking to change a box office provider, and we decided, not a formal tender, we wrote a list of about 10 things we absolutely had to have, and about 4 or 5 things we'd like to have. And we spoke to, we did our research, spoke to about, I think we sent it out to about 10 different companies. We spent quite a bit of time with 4 or 5 of them. We compared them side by side, which isn't easy because people have different pricing models, but we broke it all down, what our average event looked like, how it would translate. We compared it with our existing provider. None of them ticked all of the boxes, but most of them did. And then eventually we stayed with the supplier we were using already because they said they would fix that one little issue we had. But actually, going through that process was really worthwhile because we We could have got it cheaper somewhere else. We chose not to because we felt the level of customer service, you know, we weighed all of those things up and made a really informed choice. But we've also got all of those options still in our back pocket, just in case.
So again, I guess that comes for the supplier side. You know, I've been through that and a million pitches, and you know, it's different depending on what you're doing. You know, if it's design, you have to physically spend loads of time as a supplier. But in theory, with a lot of the event technology now, they can be more transparent. So I think the main comment from you guys is be open and be honest about what you do to help make their decision easier. Is that right? Okay, so we do have a few questions coming through, so I've got a couple more for them to go through, but if you do have any questions, please scan not my head, but the QR code, or glsr.live/ETL21 and ask your questions through there. But then, okay, so I think talking about integration maybe a little bit more, like what is it, I mean, I think you're maybe more techie than those two, is that fair to say? No, okay. You more work on the products, but when you're looking at integration, like what are you looking for? Is it kind of a, yes, we can do everything, or yes, we go through Zapier, or what helps you kind of make a decision based on actually this is going to be fairly easy to integrate to our other products that we talked about before?
So for us at RX, we build stuff internally as well. We've got an entire team, G-Tech, Global Technology. We build our own proprietary software. So it has to be able to integrate with that if it's going to be a long-term contract. Not being that techie, you know, this is way over with another team. But I know that is something that we need to talk about from the start. You know, is there an API? Are you able to integrate, or is this completely standalone? What happens to the data at the end? You know, can we integrate even the data? Even if the tech doesn't integrate, can we get the data into our CRM or whatever? That's really important to us. And again, that's a conversation that needs to happen right at the start, which I think in the past has not maybe, and that might be my fault, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't just for suppliers to learn, this is for organisers to learn about the right questions to ask as well, I think, so It's a good point. Alex?
Yeah, I think most of the sort of bigger sort of tech companies, SaaS companies now, they have APIs together, right? So that's great that the bigger guys are talking to each other, but it's then how do we support the smaller businesses, the launches that are coming up? But I think the one sticking point that always comes up in terms of integration for me, I think we're developing with the tech and the integrations all of the time. I think it's been brought into the conversation, do you integrate with this? Because this is my email provider or my reg provider or my web provider. But then it always seems to be, I don't know who's decided, but it's apparently £2,000 to integrate with anyone. And it's like, well, okay, you integrate with this company with this company for this organizer, so why is it £2,000? And I know there is work that goes into it, but it seems to be, you know, and nobody's going to sort of want to work for free, but where does that cost lie? Is it really £2,000? Like how hard is it to do the code, you know? And I think is it just the cost, I think, for me?
I mean, it's a really good point, and I think, yeah, obviously different people and how they've set things up. You know, they might be integrated to go with one supplier, and they do have to spend a couple of days to integrate elsewhere. You know, we would always look at it of, okay, that's fine, but actually if it means that we're opening up to the rest of your events, that £2,000 is a couple of days of internal cost. We're going to eat that up so that we can go with you. I'm not saying everyone should do that, but it's definitely to look at the bigger picture maybe with it.
But yeah, use that as part of your benefits then. So if you're doing your due diligence and you're doing all of your analysis across 5 potential new providers, then you look at all of those things. So, you know, what's your service level agreements? Do you get 2 days worth of support? But then actually, do you get free integration? If you're going to provide it, use it as part of your marketing. You know, these are the benefits that you get.
So maybe onto the cost side of stuff, and it's, you know, what is the cost of these products, is how long is a piece of string, everyone will have their own pricing, and that's absolutely fine. But is there a sweet spot that, you know, maybe you could just try something? You know, not necessarily a free try before you buy, but is there like a cost of, I don't know, whatever it might be, a light version for £1,000, just that you could try it on maybe a small event, or how does that work in your companies?
I think Abby had a really great point when we were sort of having the rehearsal. But yes, I do, because I think you made the point that for, you know, if the tech doesn't go right for the, you know, the organizer, you know, you still have a job, right? That's, you know, you might lose a client, but for an organizer that doesn't hit those visitor numbers, sometimes the consequences can be a lot worse So I think, yes, I think that the security, I think, was your point around that. But yeah, I think there's something in that.
Yeah, it's trust, isn't it? It's having trust in the supplier that they are going to deliver. I think that's mainly it. It's difficult as such a large organizer. It's difficult for us to, even in my job, to pilot something for a small amount of money to see whether it works or not. Because we have to be so compliant. Like our security and our data privacy teams, our legal teams, they have to make sure that this is absolutely watertight, because the size of the events that we're running, anything from 10 to 100,000 people, that's a lot of data that's at risk. So when we go to pilot something, even if it is, let's just try it out and see, it's a lot more difficult than that. So it's not about the money, really. I mean, I know that's the benefit of being a massive organizer, but it's not about the money. It's about the steps that have to be taken in order for that to happen.
I think it's a controlled risk environment, isn't it? That you can actually, and then you can say, right, we're going to trial this. And you're not sort of going, we need to do this element of the Marcoms campaign, and I'm going to put $3,000 worth of budget for it. $3,000 can sometimes be 20% of somebody's budget, especially the older shows that have got bigger databases.
So maybe, Joe, just on that, like, especially when you look at new technologies, so this isn't a new ticketing platform or a new floor planning business or whatever it might be, but if there's something new that comes to you, obviously there's a bigger element of risk of, does this thing do what it says? And maybe there's also whatever the cost might be associated to that. But is there more of a risk for you, maybe in your position of suddenly you've got to justify that $10,000 didn't do what it said it needed to do, the board are going to look at me kind of funny the next week, sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it isn't about the money, it's about the effort and what the return is from it. If you're spending $10,000, but it's going to deliver, revenue, and it's going to deliver an audience that you wouldn't otherwise reach, that's fine. What I think it comes back to the trust thing as well. If I've spoken to a couple of people here, and one guy said, I'm a runner and I come to your show, and already I'm thinking, brilliant, you're going to understand what we do, how we do it, and what we're trying to achieve. If you've got a supplier who is so focused on their product that they don't understand that, or they don't know, they can't see the pitfalls, so that all lands on you, and I'm trying to scenario plan and say, what if this happens, or what if that happens, or, and sometimes you're talking to a supplier who just simply doesn't understand what you're trying to achieve, and that's where all of that pressure is suddenly on you to make it succeed. And there's bigger risk, and it's your time and it's your effort. Sometimes it's just not worth it.
And I think that's where better the devil comes into it, which isn't great. And it's, we should be innovating and we should be having these safe spaces to trial and test. But, especially coming out of COVID now, it's more important than ever that, we have that sort of almost assurance as much as we can. And I think that's where it loops back to the people. I would go, I know this guy, or I know this girl, and they'll have my back, or they'll understand at least, and they'll be at the end of the phone, or with a glass of wine, going, oh God, I think so. It is all about, that's what, just if you're looking at your budget, increase your T&E and just slash your LinkedIn navigator, because I don't read those things.
I mean, you kind of said better the devil you know, and you looked at me and said that we've known each other 13 years, so I appreciate that, Alex. But I am going to ask another question in there that's come through. And this is, I mean, it's really good, but what is the key thing that one should look for when choosing a tech provider for our event? There are so many platforms there. I mean, how many, 100 odd in this room? But I mean, like, what should people be asking?
You just look at what you want to achieve. Start with the problem you want to solve. I mean, start with that. It has to be about, I know it's cheesy, we hear it all the time. You have to start with what is the problem that you want to solve. Okay, work backwards from that, and that can then help to fine tune what it is that you want to go and look for, because they're all, I did the event tech judging. I was just talking about it. The amount of leading all-in-one virtual and hybrid platforms for events. I mean, it's ridiculous. Somebody told me earlier there's 400 currently virtual and hybrid platforms. Start with what are their USPs? What do you actually want out of it? It really has to come down to yeah, sorry, I'm harping on now, but like...
No, and I think that's the thing, that just because if you are a virtual event or hybrid platform, there's a lot of them here, you know, it doesn't mean that, you know, just to do the meeting on your platform. Yes, it's a great showcase, but it is still about connecting people. So, and that face-to-face is never going to go away. So, you know, you should still be out and meeting them, because, you know, I need to see a 3D person that's, you know, behind it as well. So I think that's really important for me in the way my thinking process is.
And I think, remember that it's a really small industry, and none of us, well, apart from recently, Matt and I work in the same business, but, you know, I know loads of people that I've never worked with, because, you know, we're events people, we meet face to face, we like a party, we'll sit together at dinners and drinks and whatever. And so it's a really small community, and we all talk. You know, I've got a few different little WhatsApp groups where somebody says, "Oh, who knows an app provider?" or "Who knows?" And everybody immediately piles in saying, "Oh, don't use them, they were rubbish," or "What, you know, well, these are really expensive, but they're great," or, you know.
It helps. I mean, so I'm on an event tech founders forum group as well, and the same goes for organizers, just so you know. But maybe we could end with one tip from each of you. I mean, Joe, start with you. You talked about kind of how frustrating it is. I don't have those 30 minutes. What's the best tip for an event tech supplier to get in touch with you? How can they break that wall to get through to you?
I think just time it right. Say what you are. I mean, I'm looking over there. There's a company I've never heard of, but it says on it, the virtual events platform. Instantly, I know what they do. I can go there or I don't go there. That's my choice, but I know what they do and I know that brand now. There are so many where it's just really vague. Just get to the point, explain what you do. You know, I will always say, "Oh, come along to one of our events and see what we do, and then talk to me." Like, just work out, you know, what your pitch is to me about what I do and how you can help solve that problem.
Perfect. And Alex, we've got about 30 seconds for you.
I think people buy people. So I think invest in training in your sales team. If you're going to send them out, you know, don't give them a year bashing because they haven't hit target that month without giving them, you know, that proper training, and actually just go out and meet people, because people buy people, and because of trust.
Show me that you've understood my problems and my challenges. Talk to the type of event that I am, that you know that I've got. And make sure from the very first conversation that, you know, you're not asking me what I do, you already know what I do, and you're going to tell me how you're going to fix all my problems.
I mean, if they could fix all of your problems, then happy days. Amazing.
Where are they?
Sorry. Joe Tyler from Raccoon Events, Abby Cannons from RX Media, and Alex Jones from Ash Media, thank you so much for your time today.